This is Doug DeMuro, and today I'm going to be providing you with helpful financial advice, which I don't do all that often. Particularly, I'm going to explain why I think that you should finance your car instead of paying with cash. Everyone is very focused on buying things with cash. Oh, I don't have a payment. Oh, I own it outright. Oh, I have no debt, that sort of thing. Oh, I only buy a car if I can buy it with cash. You hear that all the time. And today I'm going to provide a little counterpoint to this, and I'm going to explain why I think financing a car can, in some situations, be a really good idea, better than buying with cash. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my new enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era. We have had some great sales recently on Cars and Bids, including this Ferrari 575M, which sold for almost $131,000 with the rare HGTC package. This E92 BMW M3 with only 3,000 miles that sold for $71,000, and this beautiful Porsche 996 Turbo, which sold for just under $53,000. If you're looking to sell your cool enthusiast car from the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it. You'll get the most interest in your car. And if you're looking to buy a cool modern enthusiast car, Cars and Bids has amazing selection with daily auctions. Check it out at carsandbids.com. Okay, so first, before I get into this video even a little bit, I want to make it extremely clear that the advice in this video is not intended for everyone in every situation at every time. That's very important to mention. I think generally that a lot of people should finance their cars in today's market especially, but I do not think that everyone should finance every car forever. That's not what I'm saying here. There are always some exceptions, and I will discuss, when to do it and when not to do it and why I think it can be a better idea than paying with cash. And I'm going to explain all of this stuff. When is it best? When is it not best today? But I want to preface this before people get upset. No, you don't finance. I want to explain why it's best in some situations. But first, before I get into any of that stuff, let me explain a little background. The world of personal finance and being smart with money, this has really grown in the last few years, last few decades. Probably as a response to there being so many ways that you can spend money and that you can spend money foolishly. There are so many different finance products out there and scams that you can fall for and this and that. And as those industries have propped up more and more, I think that the personal finance smart money, the Dave Ramseys, the Susie Ormans have popped up of the world, telling you, hey, here's how you be smart, here's how you budget, how you manage your money. That has become a really big industry. And also there are a lot of amateurs on internet forums, on Reddit, really all over being really smart with money. And they give all this really great advice, or at least advice that they think is really great. That's become a big trend in the last few years. And one of the things that these people advocate is purchasing a car with cash. These people say generally don't finance a car, don't make payments, don't go into debt. There's all this talk, these days of people living a debt-free life and buy cars with cash and buy assets with cash. And occasionally I run into people who proudly tell me, paying with cash is the only smart thing to do. It's the best way to do it. I don't have to think about debt. I would never, except for maybe buying a house, I would never go into debt, especially on a car, which is a depreciating asset. And how could you possibly want to go into debt for that? And I'm here to tell you that I truly think that some of this is the worst advice that you can possibly give people when it comes to being financially savvy. In fact, I think in a lot of situations, it's quite the opposite of being financially smart. Now, you may be wondering why I'm covering this at all. This is a car review channel. I occasionally dabble in the financial aspect, whatever. But, why is this coming up? And the answer is, it's constant that I'm getting asked about this by people. Hey, I'm thinking about this, I stretch, I can get this, or I just got this and I paid with cash and I'm proud of that, and what do you think? And this topic comes up all the time, and it's almost impossible to really discuss cars and buying a car and a cool car without talking about how you do that and what makes that happen. And I think a lot of people also look to me. I have some cool cars. I think I give generally pretty pragmatic advice, and a lot of people look to me and ask me thinking, hey, what do you think on this topic? And so these are my thoughts. And so here goes. There are two major reasons why I'm a big supporter of financing cars. And the biggest should be obvious to everyone, although I'm aware that it isn't, and that is debt is incredibly cheap right now. Unbelievably cheap to get a loan. I recently financed my new Land Rover Defender, which I just bought, and my credit union gave me a 48-month loan at 1.99% interest. So I'm paying 1.99% interest on this car. That's as close to free money as you're gonna get in a lot of situations. I put down maybe $20,000 and I financed the remaining $50,000 at 1.99%. Now, I bought that car on November 1st, give or take. At that time, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was at 27,000 points. Today, as I film this video, who knows where it'll be when I post it? As I film this video, it's at 34,000 points. If I had taken the full $70,000 from my Defender purchase and instead paying with cash, like people say, oh, this is the smart financial move. Instead of done that, if I had done what I did, put 20,000 down, keep 50,000 on the sidelines, taken the remainder and simply put it into an index fund of the stock market, I would have earned the finance charge for the entire loan back in 4 weeks. This is a 48-month loan. In the first month in the stock market, I would have made back the entire finance charge. And obviously that $50,000 would be worth a lot more today. The market's up like 20%. That means the $50,000 would be $60,000 in today's money, or maybe even more, depending on exactly what you invested in. Whereas if I had just paid with cash, all that money would be tied up in the car, which is losing value. The $50,000 would probably be worth $35,000 today, and I never would have realized that gain. And that opportunity cost is the biggest reason why you should finance your cars. Take your money, don't put it into a car when you can get debt as cheap as you can right now, 1.99%. Instead, do something else with the money and make it work for you instead of just tying all that money up in a car. Debt is cheap, the opportunity cost is really high. And it's so funny, all the buy with cash crowd, they're so proud of being debt-free. That's like a big thing. But in this case, being debt-free is actually losing money. If I had bought the Defender with cash, I would actually have less assets than not buying the Defender with cash. Yes, I would have the peace of mind of knowing that I'm debt-free, but I would prefer to have more money than more peace of mind. And it's not a small amount more money. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars here. And personally, it's so funny, this like budgeting, smart money crowd, they think peace of mind has a big value. You would think that they would value having money as having a big value. And that's where I don't quite understand where they're coming from in this case. Now, this is the part of this video where I want to be very, very, very clear. I do not think that everyone should finance every car ever for the reason I just stated. The debt is cheap and that the market is going up. This only works for a few reasons. For one, debt has to be cheap. So if you can finance a car at 2%, at 1%, it's almost a no-brainer. You gotta do it. There's no point in not doing it. It's 3% too, honestly. Probably even up to 4 or 5%. You should still probably finance a car. The opportunity cost is probably still higher. 4.5%, 5%, you should probably still be in the market versus tying up money in an asset. But if interest rates start to get to a point where they're at 7%, where they're at 8%, your credit isn't that great. Maybe you're paying 12, 13% because you've had, foreclosure or whatever in the past. Then you'd probably rather put your cash into a car. You're probably not gonna make more money in any financial market than 12, 13%, 7%, even 8%. And in that case, it does make more sense to pay with cash. And I agree with that. But when loans are cheap, especially as cheap as they are right now, it just doesn't make any sense to tie up all your money in a car because you can get a higher return in the stock market. So, next point here is, let's talk about that return. Over the last year, the market is up something like 20, 25%. It's absolutely insane, and it won't last. There's no question, it won't last, although it's been pretty strong for a pretty long period of time. But I remember 2008, 2009, when the market was down something like 20% in under a year. And that was tough, and that happens. And a lot of people who buy cars with cash, they use this as their excuse not to finance a car because they say, well, you can't guarantee a return in the market. So I could rather just put my money in my car than I'm debt free. And this is true. You can't guarantee a return in the market, but Historically, over a long period of time, you generally will guarantee that you will earn more than the finance charge on a 2% or a 3% loan. Historically, the market has gone up by a certain percentage every year, and it generally will in the future in perpetuity. So if you finance a car and you invest the money and you keep, and then you lose money because the market goes down, it happens. But if you do this for every car you ever own throughout your lifetime, you may lose money on one or two of them, but you'll have 5, 6, 7 other cars throughout a lifetime that you'll make money on. And in the end, you will unquestionably come out ahead, at least based on historical projections going back over a century. And so, yeah, I get that there's some risk in doing this and it may not work in your favor, but historically speaking, generally speaking, it will, especially if you do it over every car purchase that you make over your lifetime. And one other caveat to this, one other reason why maybe you shouldn't be financing a car even in this situation, I only support this strategy if you are financing a car you can otherwise comfortably afford. That's a big point to mention here. If you're making $60,000 a year, don't go out and finance a new C8 just because Doug said financing was the smart decision. That is not what you should be doing. It's only really the smart decision if you have something better that you can do with the money. If the money doesn't exist, then this is a question. You probably don't want to be doing this. But if you can take the money that you would have spent and tied up in a car and do something else with it, then that is what you should probably be doing when debt is this cheap. And frankly, I think that's the main reason that all of the personal finance obsessed, like budget friendly people, those types generally say don't finance a car. It's not, they know that you'll make more money in the market. They don't say it because they think you won't. They say it because they're worried if they tell people to go finance, then they will stretch. They will say, oh yeah, I could finance this or I could finance this, and go well beyond their budget. And so those types generally say, well, pay cash for a car because that's the smart move. At least that way you know you won't overextend yourself. And I'm saying the exact same thing. Don't finance if it means you are overextending yourself. Only do it if you can take the money that you would have put into the car and do something better with it. Now, in my mind, there is one exception to this. One situation where you may want to overextend yourself at least a little bit in order to get a better car. And this is where I think I'm generally going to diverge from the budget-obsessed, smart money, personal finance types. They will not generally agree with what I'm about to say, but I believe in it very strongly. And that is, it is, in my opinion, a good idea to finance a new car, a car that you can't afford to buy with cash, if you're trying to take advantage of advancements in technology and specifically in safety technology. I cannot tell you how many people come up to me or email me or I read online, I'm driving around in this beater 98 Corolla, 94 Civic, and it's paid for and it cost me only $3,000, bought it on Craigslist, and it's gonna run for the next 2 years and I don't have a car payment, and then I'll sell it for $3,000 and yeah, I'm killing it because I'm not spending anything. Cool. The problem is car safety technology has advanced so dramatically since the 80s or the 90s. So many of these people have these beater cars. And I get it. You're thrilled with yourself for not having a car payment and being debt-free and all the sacrifice you put up with to drive this old car just to make the smart financial decision. But cars today just weren't built to the standard that modern cars are. And they certainly weren't built with the knowledge that every other car on the road a decade, 2 decades later would be a Chevy Suburban or a Ford Expedition that would absolutely destroy your crappy little beater if they ever should face off in an accident. And I hear people say this, oh, I got my 94 Accord, I paid cash, no debt, look at me, I'm so smart with money. And I'm thinking, yeah, you're smart with money, but not your life. No, I don't think you're gonna die driving a 1990s car, generally speaking. I have this one, I drive it all the time. I have another one, I drive all the time, etc. I happily drive my own 90s cars around. But the truth is, logically, they're not safe. By modern standards comparison, they're not safe at all. I drive them for fun, but I don't take my kids in them. You know, that's the one that really blows me away. You know, I'm so smart with money. I have this 96 Accord wagon and that's my car. And I take my kids around. It's my family car. And I'm like, you take your kids in a 96 Accord wagon just so you can have tell people that you're smart with money, that you're debt free? Get your kids out of that thing and into something with airbags, with anti-lock brakes, with a backup camera. You know, backup cameras were instituted as a mandatory feature because so many people were backing over their kids in their driveways. And people were always like, oh, that's not gonna happen to me. That's what the people said who backed over their kids in their driveways. I just like, to me, it's such a clear thing. I get people want to be financially smart, but you also want to be alive. And I think dailying a 90s car, taking a 90s car on road trips, an old Accord, old Subarus, you know, it looks like a smart and acceptable thing to do. Oh, we lived through that era and it was just fine. Well, a lot of people didn't. And you know, it's a lot safer to be in a modern car today. You know, no matter how proud of yourself you are and how much you love to brag about saving money, it doesn't really matter all that much if you're dead. And so my personal view is you should be willing to extend yourself a little bit when you're financing a car if it means taking advantage of some of these great safety features that have come up. Anti-lock brakes, airbags, curtain side airbags, those are the three big ones to me. So many of those 90s cars don't have any of that stuff. And you look at death rates and you look at injury rates, cars that don't have those features, and they're big. I'm not saying you should finance a brand new 2021 car so you can get blind spot monitoring and lane keep assist, although those are very helpful features. But just getting airbags, just getting anti-lock brakes, a camera, backup camera, to me that would be worth extending yourself a little bit beyond what you would normally spend on a car with cash, just because I think that trade-off is worth it personally. So there you go, that is my advice. People always ask me about car and financial advice. Everyone always says, pay cash for a car. I'm so happy that I'm debt-free. But don't necessarily just follow that advice because debt-free sounds like a good thing. You'd rather be in debt than not in debt if it means that you can get the money to do more for you when it's not tied up in a car. So finance a car that you can afford, not stretch for a car. Finance a car that you can afford and use the money to do something else, especially when debt is so cheap. And be willing to maybe stretch your budget a little, look away from cash-only cars and stretch to a finance one if it means you can take advantage of more safety features that will keep you alive, that will keep your family alive, your children, that sort of thing. Even if it means taking on some debt. Not going crazy, but a little bit, it might be worth it. So that's my take. Financing can work for some people, despite what a lot of people tell you, and I hope now you understand why.